How often have you watched a crime film and felt a chilling sensation that you weren't seeing a staged drama, but an actual newsreel of a real event? Picture this: Italy, 1968. A director grabs his camera and goes to shoot a movie right on the heels of a crime that has just shocked the entire nation. While the grieving relatives of the victims haven't even dried their tears, and the police are still interrogating the last witnesses, a film hits theaters that recreates that nightmare with bone-chilling accuracy. And the scariest part? That film launched an entire era of brutality in Italian cinema. Buckle up. Today we're breaking down Banditi in Milano. Bandits in Milan from 1968. Welcome to Justni. If you love it when real scandals hide behind a glossy picture, when people's lives fall apart on set, and when masterpieces are born from blood and hatred, hit that subscribe button. We're turning on the dirtiest camera in film history. Let's start this story not with the credits, but with the smell of gunpowder on the streets of Milan, September 25th, 1967. A gang led by Pietro Cavallero pulls off a daring robbery at the Banco di Napoli on Largo Zandonai. The heist goes smoothly, but the escape plan falls apart. A chase begins, and at some point the bandits, trying to get away, open fire on the crowd. 3 innocent bystanders are killed, many more wounded. Italy is in shock. Just a few months pass. The brilliant and arguably the most fast-moving producer in film history, the legendary Dino De Laurentiis, decides this story must be filmed immediately. While society is still in shock, while the trial is ongoing, while emotions are still raw, he launches an instant movie. A film shot and released with incredible speed, just 7 months after the tragedy. Filming takes place mostly in Milan itself, on the very streets where the tragedy unfolded, as well as in Turin and Alessandria. This gives the picture an almost documentary authenticity. The project, produced by De Laurentiis Cinematographica with Paramount Pictures, hits theaters on March 30th, 1968. From the very start, the intrigues begin. De Laurentiis, known for his tough character and sharp business sense, insists on maximum commercial appeal. He sees the tragedy not as a social drama, but as a ready-made blockbuster. The screenwriters, Lizzani himself, along with Massimo De Rita and Dino Maiuri, try to maintain documentary accuracy, but the producer demands dynamics and spectacle. There's no conflict between studios, but between the creative team and the producer, a real war erupts. De Laurentiis pressures them to finish the film as fast as possible, while the director wants to make a social statement. Not just another action movie. But if you think the main scandal of this film is the fight over money, you're wrong. The real madness of this project lies in its director and its actors. Carlo Lizzani is a major figure in Italian cinema. Born in Rome in 1922, he went from critic to one of the key directors of neorealism. His political commitment, his closeness to Marxism, his participation in the resistance, all of this made him not just a director, but an ideologue. Seems like the perfect choice for a social drama, right? But Lizzani was known for his tough, almost dictatorial style. He demanded absolute submission from his actors and couldn't stand improvisation unless it fit his vision. The scandalous episodes of his career are a universe of their own. His previous film, Wake Up and Kill 1966, also based on real events, sparked controversy over what critics called excessive naturalism in its violence. And his early work, Bitter Rice 1949, which earned him an Oscar nomination for Best Original Story, was criticized by Marxist commentators for its exploitative elements, like the famous image of Silvana Mangano in a tight sweater, which, they argued, turned a social drama into erotic spectacle. Lizzani's personal problems that affected filming weren't about alcohol or depression, they were about politics. He was under constant pressure because of his left-wing views. In the Cold War climate and Italy's internal tensions, that made him a watched man. On Bandits in Milan, this suspect complex drove him to create a maximally objective, almost scientific analysis of crime, which ironically turned against him. As for the actors, the star, Gian Volontè, who plays Pietro Cavallero, was known for his method acting. He dove so deep into his role that it frightened those around him. To prepare, he met with the real police officer who led the case, grilling him on the tiniest details of the criminals' lives. Tomas Milian, playing Commissioner Basevi, was the polar opposite, impulsive, hot-tempered, used to dominating the set. A clash between these two giants of Italian cinema was inevitable. Even though their characters barely share any scenes, an atmosphere of competition and hidden hostility hung in the air. When the cameras finally rolled, hell literally descended. Let me tell you what happens when you gather people who can barely stand each other, and the only entertainment is destroying each other's lives. Trouble on set started on day one. Lizzani, striving for a documentary feel, used innovative methods. He mixed acted scenes with real news footage and pseudo-interviews. The actors didn't always know what genre they were working in, a crime drama or a sociological study. That caused frustration and arguments. The loudest conflict was between Volontè and Milian. Even though their characters meet only in the final chase, off-set there was a real war of egos. Volontè, immersed in his role as a philosophizing gangster, thought Milian was too shallow an actor. Milian, in turn, mocked Volontè's method, calling it posturing. According to crew members, they barely spoke to each other, and scenes with both of them were shot at different times, using doubles for wide shots. There were no firings or replacements. The budget and schedule were too tight, but censorship became a real headache. The film, which depicted violence with unprecedented brutality, was attacked by the church and conservative groups. The scene where the gang kills a hostage and the final mob lynching of the criminals provoked particular outrage. The producers had to cut several especially bloody shots. Government pressure was also real. Authorities didn't want Milan's image as a thriving economic center tarnished by the label Crime City. So what do we actually see on screen after all this madness? The plot at first glance is simple. 4 desperate criminals led by Pietro Cavallero, Gian Volontè, terrorize Milan. Opposing them is Commissioner Basevi Tomas Milian, who hunts the gang using the most modern forensic methods. But don't rush for the popcorn. Hidden inside this simplicity is a bomb. Lizzani does not lead us linearly from robbery to chase. He starts with a sociological analysis of crime in wealthy Milan, gambling dens, loan shark schemes, sleazy dance halls, and the hard lives of people pushed to the margins of the economic miracle. Then we see the aftermath of the failed robbery, then the events that led to it, then the robbery itself, and then the aftermath again. The film feels like an investigation, where the pieces of a puzzle assemble into a horrifying picture. This fragmentation, this almost postmodern play with time, turns watching into an intellectual challenge. The themes raised in the film are a mirror reflection of the scandals of the era. This is a story about how the Italian economic miracle bred monsters. Pietro is not just a robber. He's a product of the system, a worker who decided the only way out of poverty is to take what belongs to others by force. The connection to real people is direct. Like the real Cavallero, Volontè's character sees himself as a superman, a philosopher of the criminal underworld, but in the end, turns out to be pathetic and cowardly. The uniqueness of the plot lies in its documentary foundation and in Lizzani's refusal to give easy answers, showing crime as a complex social phenomenon, not just the result of evil will. Then the film is finished. You'd think they could finally exhale, but no. The loudest act was just beginning, the premiere and the film's fate. Bandits in Milan was selected for the main competition at the 1968 Cannes Film Festival. That was a huge honor. But the festival was cancelled due to student protests in the Red May in France. The film never screened on the Côte d'Azur. Irony. A film about social rebellion couldn't take part in a festival that itself fell victim to social rebellion. Critics and audiences were split. Some called the film disgusting, pornographic garbage. Others hailed it as a revolutionary breakthrough in psychological horror. But one thing was clear. Audiences crave this kind of cinema. The film grossed an enormous sum for its time, 1.768 billion lire in Italy. It was a true financial triumph, proving that the public wanted sharp, socially conscious, brutal stories. Bans and boycotts followed. The Catholic Church condemned the film for promoting violence. Conservative circles demanded the film be banned. Lawsuits, however, never came. Perhaps because the director and producers were too influential. But the real consequences for those involved were serious. Lizzani, despite the success, never fully shed the label of scandalous director, even though his later works were in demand. The actors gained even more popularity, but their later careers were shadowed by their association with this brutal film. Now let's dig deeper. Because there are facts that were kept quiet for decades. Who hated whom? We've already told you. Who set whom up? Here's a real detective story. There's a theory that screenwriter Massimo Derrida, working with Lizzani, secretly passed information to the producer about the director's creative excesses, fearing the film would be too intimate and wouldn't recoup its budget, which scenes were cut on demand. Originally, the film showed the preparations for the robberies in more detail, including scenes with small-time merchants and loan sharks. The censors felt these episodes showed how to evade the law too explicitly and demanded they be trimmed. Also cut was an interrogation scene where police used psychological pressure. The authorities thought it discredited the justice system. What secret connections existed among the participants? Rumors have it that Dino De Laurentiis himself had unofficial contacts with people close to Cavallero to get exclusive details for the script. Officially, of course, this was never confirmed. And now, half a century later, how do we look back at this chaos? What turned out well? Against all odds, the visuals and the acting. The cinematography by Giuseppe Ruzzolini, shot in Techniscope and Technicolor, created that newsreel look that keeps viewers in constant tension. Volontè's performance is a masterclass in Italian theater. He doesn't just play a gangster, he plays an idea, a sickness of society. The music by Riz Ortolani and Nino Ferrer adds anxiety and drama. Where did the film fail? In its excessive didacticism. The first sociological part of the film is too drawn out and feels like a lecture. It literally spells out what could have been shown through images. As a result, the beginning may feel slow to modern viewers. How did the scandals affect the film's reception? Strangely, they also created its cult status. In the 1980s, when the film was released on VHS in the US and UK under the title The Violent Four, word got about a scandalous film that almost got banned, turned it into a legend. Critics revise it. Today, Bandits in Milan is considered the starting point for the entire Poliziottesco genre. It showed that Italian cinema could be not only intimate and auteur-driven, but also sharp, dynamic, and spectacular, directly responding to society's sore spots. In 2008, the film was included by Italy's Ministry of Cultural Heritage in the list of 100 Italian films to be saved, as a picture that changes collective memory. So what is Banditi a Milano? It's not just a movie. It's a cinematic document of an era, rising from the archives to prove its own vitality. It's a story about how human pride, greed, and social inequality breed monsters, and how art tries to make sense of that chaos. This film changed the industry because after it, Italian producers realized audiences don't just want pretty fairy tales, they want the brutal truth of life. It launched a wave of imitators, but it remains an unmatched example of the genre. It didn't destroy careers, but it changed their trajectory forever. On Just Sneak, we love digging into stories like this. If you want to hear about even crazier projects, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment about which film you think should be recognized as a cultural treasure but remains in the shadows. And I'll sign off now to prepare new investigations for you. Remember, wherever it smells of sulfur, there's always a story they tried to hide. See you.